let me just put a link to the live stream in the announcements, and then we'll get going. Okay. This is cool. I don't know exactly what it's for, but I suppose I don't need to know exactly what it's for. Did you say it was the perspective that you were struggling with? Perspective and values of the clouds. Okay. I think there are some really strong indicators of perspective that are really off at the moment, and they have to do with reflected light and water, which is kind of tricky. So I don't know what your client has like specifically requested of you, so it might be that they want something really particular, and so feel free to disregard whatever it is that I say. But I think the one thing that's like killing your perspective right now is this here. Maybe a new layout. This bit, because it kind of presupposes that we're viewing it from a very particular angle immediately, and that angle doesn't match the clouds, doesn't match the building, doesn't match any of this, but it's just such a strong indicator of perspective that you can't unsee it once you've seen it, right? So effectively, if you think about what exactly we're seeing when we're seeing reflections of waves on reflections of the tips of waves on water, is we're seeing a grid pattern, right, going away from shore that is foreshortened the further away it gets. So when it gets back here, it's really thin, and then the closer it gets to us, right, the bigger it gets. Okay. But the only reason that you see this normally is because your eye is in line or close enough in line with the surface you're seeing it. So here's our big eye. Boop, boop, boop. Right, and you're seeing, or you'll probably see something like that. So the surface will be just below. So if you imagine that the sun is over here, it'll be even further to the right. The light from the sun is basically going to bounce down and reflect back into our eye, and that's how you get all those specular reflections. But if we're all the way up here, if all of a sudden our eye is, hello, up here looking down, well, A, you're not going to see this really tight grouping of those reflections because you're not viewing it on a flat surface. You're not really going to see any reflection at all because you're actually going to see down and into the water. Do you know what Fresnel is? So you can test this idea yourself with like any surface really, but Fresnel is just this idea that the shallower your viewing angle to a surface, the more reflective it becomes. So you have this with books. I don't know if you got any like hardback glossy books. It happens with loads of stuff, but that's just the first example that springs to mind. Is if you look at it like this, and it's like, I don't know, the great big book of art. Well, and let's say that there's a window behind it. Well, if we look at it here, we're probably going to be able to see the cover just fine. But as soon as you look at the exact same book from like this kind of an angle, you know, your angle compared with the book, or the flat plane of the book, is so much shallower that you actually kind of see whatever's behind the book. Whatever light source or thing is behind the book here is actually what you're going to see on the top plane. So the shallower the angle, just think of it like mirrors, right? The shallower the angle is that you see a mirror, you're reflecting things from behind it or further away in the opposite direction, if that makes sense. It happens with... I always visualize it with like wooden tables. You know, if you look straight down at a wooden table, it's usually going to have a lot of those sort of warm mahogany wooden colours, but as soon as you view it at that shallow angle, they get a lot cooler because you're actually seeing cool light from like a window or whatever it might be behind it. So basically, I think the idea has to be that we're just not going to see that. It's just not going to be there. Same thing on the shore. Now, what you might have instead, which is sort of comparable, is that idea of you can have this white here that's going back in distance, but it's not a reflection of the light. It's like sea foam, you know, where it's splashing up against the thing. And I'm imagining that, you know, that you can get this nice transition where the shore's got all this foam, and the further back it goes, the less of that we're getting. But even this feels a little bit weird. It feels like maybe the perspective on the castle is a little bit too foreshortened. And we should be seeing more of the top of it based on the clouds that we're seeing. I guess the other way we can think about it is, let's look at these clouds for a second. So this is the ellipse that you have for this cloud. The world's dodgiest ellipse. Right? That is almost a circle. The closer this ellipse gets to a circle, which is like that, it's really not far off at all, the more it's like we're looking straight down at it. Whereas I think based on the building you've got, you'd want it much thinner. Something like that. So let's keep that there. So actually, maybe this cloud's going to come round the front. You can figure out how to compose it and make it look nice. I'm just going to tell you how it works. And those clouds feel more like they are in perspective, or the perspective that you're aiming for. It's still a little bit dodgy though, isn't it? I think the other thing that's throwing it off is, well, it's the figures themselves, because here's my flat plane. Here's the beach. There's my castle. Here's our camera. And you would expect, if the people were coming towards the camera, that they would be, I guess, parallel to the camera, or perpendicular, right? So it's almost like they're coming towards it with more foreshortening. But you're saying that the camera is like pointing down like that at quite a harsh angle. You know, it might even be going further down than that. But your people are like that. Do you know what I mean? Like they're floating perpendicular to the ground plane. Does that make sense? Yeah, so if you want to reinforce the perspective, you'd have to foreshorten the characters much more. That's probably not an option for you, considering how much you've already done. But, you know, it would be... Let's just... It would be like, here's the head of the character. Here's the shoulder of the character. Let's say that's the skirt wrapping around You know, the feet are down there, and then the wings are coming back, right? And because it's now this character's, how can we illustrate this? This character's head and feet are oriented to be perpendicular with a ground plane, and therefore as soon as we see the character and we see the ground like this, we sort of understand that that's a 90-degree angle, and it makes more sense in our heads. So maybe you can retcon that by like making the head bigger, making the torso. It's really moving the shoulder line back. It's the head compared with where the shoulders lie, and then like completely overlapping these elements. So the rib cage would overlap the pelvis or whatever else, but it's probably not what the person commissioning you is going for. So let's think of a different way of doing this. The other way of doing this is we just fix the clouds in the castle, which is probably more preferable, isn't it? So that's just we've got our characters, we've got the beach. I would probably curve the beach round the opposite way, but that's up to you. Let's get rid of this castle. So our castle is going to be much flatter in perspective, so we're not going to see anywhere near as much of the top plane of it. That's still going to go. We're going to see much more of the beach and the foam. Now we can probably bring those like reflections back. If you are going to have trees, they're not going to be all the way down here. They're going to be, you know, quite big. We're actually going to see the sky because our eye level is like at the very least going to be there. And then our clouds are going to be, let's grab that nice pink color you've already got. Doing, you know, that or whatever. So you can either do that or change the perspective of the characters, but there's something about the perspective has got to change, because they don't seem to fit too well together. Obviously this is all for you as an artist. I think you could give this to an average client and they might not care. Right? They might go, oh, the characters look really cool, the background looks really cool. It's not an error that I would expect them to notice. But certainly little things like the reflection of the water and the clouds, even something like that, I think really, really helps. And then maybe this cloud, let's just keep going with this. So maybe this cloud would come further towards us like this down here. Yeah, I think so. Maybe we could silhouette more of this character on blue. You know, even that I think is a little thing that you can do. Maybe we could say that the angle is shallower by actually introducing a bit more of the water up here, like that's another circle of cloud. You know? So I'll grab this and I'll put it in feedback in response to your original. Is it too big? Let's just screenshot it. There you go. You are here, right? You're welcome. This is a really tricky one to feedback on, because it's not a style that I work in. Do you have any, just right in VC, do you have any, like, specific things that you want to know about this? You know, it's clear you're going for something kind of cartoony or graphic with line art, which isn't something I do all that often. Is there something in particular you're struggling with, or I wonder if you're here or if you're AFK. You are here. I can see you typing. Okay. Let's just close that. In fact, I'm going to send in a screenshot of this as well. And a screenshot of that as quick and as awful as it might be. There are a couple of things that I think I could comment on while I wait for you to type anyway. So one of them is going to be this. This is smoke. You've done it on a screen layer or something, I assume, but it's lightening up the ear when actually it should probably just obscure it, right? You know, we're not going to see as much of that if it's going in front of it. I've probably made it a little bit too thick there. Same thing with the skin, is it's probably not going to lighten up the skin. Now it might be lighter than the background, but the other thing is it's also not going to have this, you know, perfectly sharp silhouette come through it. As the smoke is in between us and our subject, that hard edge is probably going to diffuse a little bit. So let's just do something like that. That's easy enough. You're new to character stuff and you're trying to design something interesting for D&D, but the anatomy changes, particularly blending and color would be useful. Okay. I think color is okay. You've not done an awful job with that. Things like the cigarette are getting a little tiny bit muddy, but that's fine. I think there's... I can't use my red annotation, can I? Because it's already red. This is a tangent. This streak of hair going across the face is a tangent. It's a tangent with the corner of the eye, the corner of the nose, and where this cigarette interacts with the mouth. So potentially you would want to move it, you know, because it just seems to be lining up. It's not. There's nothing inherently wrong with a tangent. I found an Instagram artist recently that did tangents really well, like deliberately. But I think it's a little bit distracting. Like I'm almost stuck looking at it because it's eye-catching. So let's just get rid of it for now. Chalk, and we'll put it back in somewhere else. So where could we put it instead? Well, we could probably just continue this one, like in front of the eye, but it's also joining up here. You know, I think that's less of a crime. So getting, that's a compositional thing more than anything, really. Other things, I just feel like there needs to be some kind of internal consistency with the line art, right? So either things have a big thick outline or things don't have a big thick outline, or there's an in-between where things have like a medium thickness outline or something. Like I see no reason why the corner of the mouth should have a big dark outline, but the corner of the nose shouldn't have one. So this is a case of just thinking about what this represents. So you're using line here, or I suppose the sort of black shadow, you're using that to represent darkness or shade or an area that's occluded. that might also include like the corner of the eyes, you know, yeah, underneath the nostrils, the bottom lip. It could include the top eyelid. So it's almost like establish a rule set that you're going to use and then apply that rule set evenly over the whole image rather than just in like one place. 'Cause I feel like it kind of throws it off a little bit. The alternative is we get rid of this big thick outline instead, so we can just lighten it up like that, so it's not quite as visually intrusive, right? It's not like here's a big thick line that we can't get past. So you could lighten that up, line it up near the tips of the ears. This is probably something more along the lines of what I would do, right? Other things, just thinking about the mouth a little bit. And this goes for anything, but I'll use the mouth as an example. Just think about where the light's gonna hit it. You've set out saying that everything that it's being lit from above, and this top plane of the forehead is being hit by light. Parts of the cheeks are being hit by light. Like arguably, maybe that should go a little bit higher. You know, maybe more of the bridge of the nose should get hit. The chin, top lip, okay. But that also means that other areas, like the top lip, are going to go into shadow. So let's say that that's our nose, which is doing something like this. We're going to have the fulcrum that's going to go there into the top lip. And then we're going to get the rounded out bottom lip going down and then back into a chin. And so all of these planes are receiving light, but the bottom lip, the top lip, the underside of the top lip isn't going to receive any light. And so we can make it a little bit darker, and it's actually kind of a strong visual indicator of form. Is the difference in the lips. I quite like that as something we can use. So I'm lightening up those things. Other places we might want to lighten up: eyebrows. Like, think about what an eyebrow is. So an eyebrow is, well, it's a patch of skin. This is the coloured skin we've chosen. And then it's hair sat right on top of skin, but it's not like a big block of hair. It's gonna be lots and lots of tiny hairs, a big collection of lots and lots of tiny hairs, right? And you're not gonna draw every individual one because that would be ridiculous. But some parts of an eyebrow are less thick than other parts. Tends to be that I almost like to think of it as like an eyebrow within an eyebrow. So if we say that this is the shape of our eyebrow, which is quite thick, I like to think that inside of that eyebrow, we have a smaller eyebrow, right? And this part of the eyebrow gets really, really thick. And then that's when we start to see it sort of taper off down here. So I would represent the density of eyebrow hair with just a change in value, some kind of gradient outwards from the center where it's the most thick. So you might find that if we just sample the skin color, that actually the corners of the eyebrow aren't quite as thick, right? You could soften them a little bit. Stop using both of these layers on top of each other, shall we? Okay. I feel like some other areas are just a bit unresolved. Like, what is going on with hair? Are these like box braids or something? Should these be going up into sections that have been divided up on top of each other? Is it going to part in the middle? You know, this is a really perfectly hard edge here for the hair. And usually you're not going to get that for a hairline. You're going to get skin fading into hair. Remember that the hair is coming out of the head, so a little bit like the eyebrows. You're going to get a softer edge. And that's all it needs is a teeny tiny softer edge, so we can do that. It's just, what else can we do? I think you've done a good job with the colour that you've chosen for the whites of the eyes. I think usually people go a bit too bright, so that's not too bad. You know, arguably you could still blend this out a little bit. Think about the structure on the inside of the ear. Are we actually going to see more bits and pieces than that? Maybe. I was gonna say we might see more light reflected into the hair, but it seems like a stylistic choice that you're having it completely like a big blocky graphic shape, so I'm happy to leave that as is. But then other parts, it's just just slow yourself down a little bit and just be careful with what you're doing. Like, is there any reason why the dog tag is way thinner here? And then it gets really thick, and then thinner, and then thicker again, rather than actually, you want this line that you've chosen, it's not just an arbitrary decision, it reflects the 3D form of whatever it is that you're representing. Okay, so make a decision about that. How thick is it meant to be? What's it made of? Is it string? Maybe it should be chain or something, right? If those are dog tags, in which case we might see more light reflected on them. We're getting another level of information down. Is this a jumper? Well, or a sweater, whatever. Well, if it is, then, you know, how is that attaching to the neck? It could be like a V-neck, could be how it is already, but is there going to be another line here where the collar of the jumper attaches? You know, that's a decision that you can make. So I think generally we just want to take what you already have, which is a really cool looking dude, and just think a little bit further about this. So dog tags, right, are they his dog tags? Well, can we just imply that there's some writing on them? Like, that's 3 lines, and we've done that. Is this a gun? This thing? Yeah, well, maybe this is a bit big for the stock of a gun. I mean, it sort of depends what kind of gun it is. But there are other things that we can do to make it feel more like the stock of a gun. I feel like at the moment it's blending into like the body armor and everything else. It's like a sniper. Okay. So maybe we could just, you know, you get some really cool gun stocks that have all this gubbins in them and whatever else. Has he like customized his gun stock at all? Could there be there could be like a cushioning or whatever on the end of it? Just anything to differentiate it from whatever else is going on. Even if you just say, well, the gun stock is slightly lighter. It's a slightly lighter grey. Well, all of a sudden I can see it. It's not disappearing into everything else. I think that's a really good thing. Just separate it somehow. Value, colour, anything. But yeah, this is a tricky one. This is a very tricky one to crit. Just because it's so far away from anything I would do. You know, it Should we see more of this? I'm tempted to just... You've got a really hard separation between the face and the neck that I don't know if I would have. If we're being lit from the top down, maybe I would have a harsher shadow from the nose onto the top lip that would extend from the bottom lip onto the chin, and then we could suppose that there's a shadow going on there. So I hope that's helpful. There's a couple of little things that I've told you. I could continue painting it, but I feel like I'd just make it a me painting, and it would no longer be yours. It would no longer have your style that you've tried to do with it, you know. So yeah, I think the main takeaway is that idea that you're just deciding how much of a thing you want, and then sticking to that. Like, do you want big thick lines? Well, okay, apply them uniformly. That kind of thing. So let me just screenshot this fella and put it in feedback in response to your original, and then we'll go on to James's. Is James in the call? I don't think he is. Is Lyndon in the call? No, I don't think they are. Okay. We'll do yours next, so Ryan. So he said, you're having trouble with making the shadow tones pop better against the light ones. Are your values too flat? No, is my answer. I think it's fine. So you're imagining that this is a shadow tone, like, I guess this is a bounce light on the underside of the tree, but the stuff in shadow seems fine. If you're hoping that this shadow tone is going to pop from the background, it might just be that your background's too dark. You could lift the value of the background. Let's set the brush opacity a little bit higher. And those shadow tones might seem to stick out a little bit better now. You know, it's still dark enough that the highlights are like really nicely silhouetted, but maybe your background's getting a little bit too dark if you want the shadows to appear. Let's just... You could bring some of this really nice bounce light you've got going into the tree. I like that. Maybe we could bring some of it into the leaves. I mean, typically leaves are reasonably glossy. They're going to diffuse the light because there's so many of them and they're translucent, but you know, is there anything preventing us getting a little bit more of that bounce light back into the tree up here? I don't think so. I think we can do that. You tried to do your rendering like Canliu with top facing blue and bottom facing orange. Doesn't feel right even though you follow that rule. Yeah, I don't think I suspect that even Canliu doesn't follow that rule all the time, right? It's a fun little rule if you want to render an asset, but it's only working here because you have yellow on the floor, right? It, like, you couldn't bounce light it warm from below if the ground plane was cool. It just wouldn't make sense. But also you're lighting the lit side of these leaves with a warm light, and you're lighting the top plane of this rock with a warm light. So you have a cool fill light somewhere. Maybe more of that should be brought into the shadow side of the rock. So we could go a bit more sort of electric blue with it, but I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with what you've already got. I think the main thing is to make an informed decision based on actually the result you want to get, rather than because it's a particular process, right? So some areas that feel a bit off at the moment, it's like here. So you're saying that this part of the tree is receiving a rim light from the right side, but it can't because there's a rock in the way. Now it might receive some warm light bounced off of the rock, so we can take some of that warm light and we can say, yeah, that's bouncing back up, but it's not going to be that cool rim light. It just can't get there. Same thing down here. It's not going to happen. Maybe we could get more more of a sort of ambient occlusion interaction happening, where the tree is hitting the rock, but I don't know if this meshes with the sort of style that you're going for. Something like that. And then let's think about a similar thing up here. Is actually this part of the tree is so far away from the grass that maybe it won't receive quite as much of that warm light anymore. You know, I just don't know where it's coming from. So this is coming from over here. You have some kind of cool light on the right side of the image that's lighting up the right side of that twig, but then the left side of this is in light, which doesn't make any sense. So let's take this and let's make it darker, and let's say that the left side of this is just in shadow, but it's a filled shadow. You never know if this here is getting pelted with warm light. It's entirely possible that a lot of that warm light filters through, and actually all these branches are going to warm up, you know, as that light's sort of making its way through the tree. It's a much more sort of impressionistic way of thinking about it there. So something like that. Does that make sense? Is there anything else in particular you want me to have a look at? I feel like it's just making sure that all of your lights are coming from a particular direction and they make sense. I definitely wouldn't make an arbitrary decision like it's just this color from this direction and this color from here without thinking about the physics of it, I guess. I'm a big fan of this idea that actually we should be a little bit more technical, and we should think about these things as though we are lighting artists, right? Or stage lighters or anything like that. Yeah, definitely think about things in a 3D sense. Whenever you see a graphic shape, whenever you see a nice graphic shape, so that is a really nice graphic shape, but it means something. It means you have a 3D form that's being lit from a particular place with a light that's a particular size and strength, and you want to understand those relationships so that you can invent this stuff from your imagination. Yeah, I can do yours next, Brie. Let me just put this in feedback. So you've drawn like flowers on top of a branch, which is cool.
I took the picture myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. The goal was to make the flowers look like they belonged.
I think that you need to. Do you own like a proper camera? like a DSLR or anything? You don't have to. I'm just wondering if you
No,
do. Okay.
I just used my phone.
Do you change the exposure on your phone when you're taking photos?
I try to.
Okay. This is an exposure problem, getting these flowers to match. So either you could. Do you see how all of this branch is basically a silhouette?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not. I mean, the branch is more or less the same. So the branch is more or less the same color, right? But some parts of it aren't. Like, there are buds on the branch. I imagine they have a different local color, but in this image, everything has gone to being silhouetted. And it's because your camera on your phone is exposing for light, or trying to. So you have the moon, which is this incredibly bright reflected light. It's not even really the moon that's the problem, it's the sky. Because the sky is one big. I like to imagine the sky is one big light box, right? It's reflecting
it's
so much
actually
light from the sun.
The sky is actually a lot darker in reality than in the picture.
Yeah, yeah. So, what sort of time of day was this?
I could still see the sun, but it was starting to set.
Okay. The sky is pretty bright. It's brighter than like an arc light, which is a very bright light. So basically, if you're exposing for the sky, anything else has to get darker because your phone camera only has a limited amount of information that it can work with, right? So it's like, well, I need to let enough light into the... no, sorry. It needs to let a limited amount of light through the camera because otherwise the sky will completely blow out. I'm sure you've had it where you point your camera up at the sky and it's like pure white, right?
Yeah.
So because it's only letting so much light through the camera, in comparison, this gets darker and we're not letting enough light in that we can actually see differences in local color.
But the problem is the picture wasn't originally intended for the purpose I used it. I was trying to focus more on the moon, and it didn't really work.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a problem. Like, I think you can use the picture how you've used it. You just need to understand the effect that underexposure is going to have on the subject that you've painted. So you've painted these flowers as though we're exposing for the flowers. So it would basically, what would have to happen here is we'd also see the rest of the information on the branches. We might see differences in, let me turn this up a little bit, differences in color where these buds are, but something like the sky is gonna go like it's gonna go crazy bright because we're letting so much light in so that we can see those flowers that everything else has to get brighter as well. And it might literally go pure white, depending on how sunny it was. I wasn't there, so I can't tell. So because we're exposing for the sky, the simple answer is just that your flowers should get darker and they should get less saturated, which is a bit sad because they sort of become little silhouettes, right? So yeah, maybe next time you wanna like draw and paint on top of a
It might
photo.
also just look better if there's just more flowers and leaves.
I don't know. I think I quite like what you've got here. I think compositionally it kind of works, right? Because you have a contrast between everything else that hasn't bloomed, and then our attention is drawn to just this branch that has, right? And so we're focused on this because it's unique, because it's the only blooming flower on the tree, or it's 3 flowers. Whereas if you said, well, actually, There's loads of blooming flowers. The whole tree's got flowers on. Well, now I don't know where to look because I could look at any of them, if that makes sense. So I
That
think
is an issue I have commonly in my art.
yeah, I like to call it. I think I've heard other people refer to it as the rule of odds, but that's kind of something different. It's basically this idea that let's do a little illustration of the idea, shall we? So we've got a little red guy. There he is. We've got a little blue guy. There they are. And we've got a little green guy. Right, which guy is most important in this image?
It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's impossible to say. It could be any of them. It could be none of them. But
My
if
eyes are drawn to the middle one, but they're also drawn to the red one because red is a bright color.
yeah, red is bright, so that's a nice contrast. But we can.
Red is also my favorite, so.
Well, that's fair. But we can make contrasts in other ways. So, if I say, actually, my green guy's he's got a couple of friends with him, and the red guy has also got a couple of friends with him.
I feel like that makes the blue guy more important.
Yeah, it does, right? So that's the point. So because there's only one of him, I think it's by virtue of contrast, right? So there are loads of them, there are loads of those. There's only one of this, so it's scarce, and it becomes what we're looking
And
at.
the
We're like, why is
center
that
also
different?
helps with that.
Yeah, it does, but we could put him anywhere else, and I think he'd also bring up the focus. Now you could do the opposite, where you could have one red guy, one blue guy, and a group of green guys. And actually, now we're going to look at the group just because they sort of break the rule, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
if the rule in your image is that these haven't flowered yet, and there's one set of flowers, well, we're going to look at them. You could have the opposite. You could have the whole branches in flower, but there's one bud that hasn't flowered yet, and we want to focus in on that, right? And it's,
I
that
guess
but
that one would probably be against the moon if I did do that.
yeah, and that'd be a point of high contrast, which would be nice. But it would be you'd be telling a very different story. So when you're making these images, I know you've just sort of done this because, I mean, it's a cool idea. I don't blame you for it. But when you're making an image, you sort of want to start from that point. You want to start with, what's the story? What do I want to say? What's the statement that I want to make artistically? And then how am I going to use things like this? How am I going to use contrast? How am I going to use exposure? You could have it exposed so that the sun and the sky is completely white and just blown out, but we can see all these beautiful colors in the flowers. That's a choice that you can make, but you want to be doing it in service of like I don't even think story is the right word. Narrative might be the right word. You don't have to have a story about why this one bud has flowered, but just some sense of something's going on here. There's a feeling, there's a mood, there's something, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll
And then, do you think potentially just changing the branches a little bit to make the colors match a little bit more with the flowers would do anything good?
yeah, you could brighten up the branches a little bit to try and match the exposure of the flowers. There's nothing saying that you have to. It's tricky. There are no rules in art really. There's nothing saying that you have to match the way that a camera deals with exposure. You could, if you wanted. You could have bright flowers, a bright background, and bright branches. It's just it would no longer look like.
Feel a bit much.
It might not. It depends how you do it. You'd be lighting it. Do you know what HDR lighting is? Yeah. So you'd be using a high dynamic range, which is, if you get your phone to take a HDR photograph, it's effectively taking an overexposed photograph and an underexposed photograph, and then it's mixing them together to get like a midpoint. And you could do that. So we could do this. We could even take the moon and just, in fact, let's just shift it down a little bit so it's not quite as bright. Right? It's not receiving as much
I
light.
actually like that.
Yeah, that's something we can do. And that's fine. That works. Maybe actually this side of it is still quite light, but You can play around with all sorts. So, yeah, the main takeaway before I move on to the next person is if you're going to add stuff to one part of the image, you just have to match the lighting of the rest of it, or you just make more changes to the rest of the image as well to sort of try and unify those things, right?
Okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Who's next? Let's see. Let's try this. Okay, what's your goal with this? Is this like a D&D? It's sort of a self-insert, isn't it?
It was me and a couple of friends decided to draw ourselves as like superheroes.
Okay.
Very much like my superhero clothes is literally just what I wear on a daily basis.
That's fun.
But it's also just become like I've had it called a goal sona
A goal sona. Wow.
because it's just what I wish I looked like.
Okay. 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 I'll just pick whatever I can see.
I mean, immediately it looks very busy to me, at least.
It is getting quite busy, but I think it's balanced fine with big open areas like this. Like it's not so busy that I can't tell what's going on. Like the point of this is that it's busy. You can have an area of, oh god, I can't, my words. So if you get something really, really, really busy, let's do something. I mean, we'll literally use noise. Let's do it monochromatic, shall we? Let's do it again. So if I zoom in on this, it's going to hurt your eyes. So sorry about that. Right, and but it's really dense information, and the information is binary. So you get perfect black pixels, perfect white pixels. There are some like gray pixels in between, but mostly it's perfect black, perfect white. And then the further you zoom out and you squint your eyes, you're actually getting an average of that information, right? So this is no longer lots of black and white pixels. I mean, it still is. But actually, it's more or less the same gray as the background in Photoshop.
Kind of like the same way that computer screens work.
Yeah. So when you have all of this information, none of it's going like crazy. You could have committed a sin and gone, oh, it's going to be like these crazy bright colors. But none of it's going that crazy, and I feel like when I squint my eyes, it just blends in with the rest of it. So I'm okay with it being there. Maybe you do want the opposite, right? Because it's a superhero, and like those badges are quite an important element on the character. Maybe you do want to bring a little bit more focus to them, or some in particular. So I'm not sure what that's meant to be. Oh, is it Majora's Mask thing?
It's like a heart.
Okay.
It's supposed to have writing on it, but it's so small.
Okay, but maybe we do say that some things are getting a little bit brighter and standing out a little bit more if this is a part of the character that you do want to draw attention to. So I wouldn't worry about that. What I would worry about as a priority is the knees, because this knee is here and this knee is here, and there is no reason for that.
As soon as you mentioned it, yep.
So I think, I know it's an easy fix. My goal with these crit sessions is not to just tell people what's wrong, but maybe where they've gone wrong or why they didn't notice it themselves, or so it doesn't get repeated in the future. So if this is our character, there's the head, torso. That's okay. So I'm supposing that the horizon line is up here somewhere, probably there, right? And so every parallel point on the body is gonna start. They're gonna recede to that line, and what that means. I know that you've done a perspective class with me, so this I've probably already said it before, but you know these 2 points, that line is perfectly shallow, but the further down this body we get, like these 2 shoulder points, they're going to angle even further down. When we get down here for the waist or the pelvis, like you know these lines are going to start going more and more vertical. What might happen is down here, actually you might have a knee that's all the way up here and another knee that's all the way down here, right, in perspective. But everything else has to accord to that, so if we're going to have that, well, we might also have, here's one foot, the dodgiest foot I've ever drawn, and the other foot might be up here. So, like, we're carrying on that trend. So I do see it a lot where people go, well, this leg's further forward or something, so the knee should be further down, which it can be, but then the only thing you've got to do is make sure that the feet do the same thing. So if you're getting that angle there, you're going to get an even more extreme angle down here, and then it'll level out, and wherever it levels out, it'll start going the opposite way. So you might have like your eyebrows facing the other way or something. But all those points, it's literally a 1-point perspective grid, right? All those points are receding to an imaginary vanishing point. So there's our person-shaped box. This is basically an orthographic, what you've drawn. So it's really easy. It's like feet are in line, knees need to be in line. Everything else is fine. There's a slight sway there, which is okay. There's a huge stylistic difference between these two, to the point where this doesn't just feel like a zoom in of this, it feels like it's a completely different style. Is that what you intended? Did you want this to be maybe a more realistic version of this?
I'll be honest, I was kind of just drawing both of them, so I wasn't really thinking about it
Oh, okay.
at the time.
It's things like the eyes on this are further down the head. The simplification of the jawline and where it attaches to the neck, whereas here you've got that secondary fold in. Like, as soon as you get that second sort of layer of resolution deep where you're thinking about things like skin folds, you're moving away from this and getting something a bit more realistic, which is different. So I don't mind this being a different style to this version. That's fine.
Why would I make the small one more? Because it's obviously it's way smaller. So I was like, well, it has to be simpler because otherwise you get.
Yeah, it does have to be simpler, but I think a big part of what's making them feel different is just the proportions as well. So like these eyes, that looks really weird now because I haven't moved the mouth and the nose, right? But like they're getting a bit closer to what they should be, compared with that one on the left. So it's proportional differences as well, like the size of the nose compared with the one on the left is different. The size of the eyes is going to be different. So yeah, it's not just the level of detail, it's just the proportions you've chosen. You've stylized them maybe without realizing it over here, which I don't mind. I quite like the little stylized version, but those are things to watch out for. Thinking just logically, I think in terms of design, if you want some design advice,
Yes, please.
I think one of these is fine, but assuming you're not ambidextrous, I don't know why you'd have one on the other wrist.
Funnily enough,
Are you actually ambidextrous?
Yes.
Alright, okay. Well, there you go.
Though I'm not very good at drawing with my left hand. Part of it is muscle memory, so.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, just in terms of the asymmetry of the design, it's meant to be very
Yeah.
sort of punky, isn't it? You've literally got
Yeah,
the
I get it.
anarchist
It's supposed to be
symbol.
asymmetrical, yeah.
Yeah, you could go further with the asymmetry. You could have like one trouser leg rolled up or folded over, or one of the flaps of the shoes is popping out. Right, you could really sort of make it a bit more wild to reflect the same kind of wild you've got in like the silhouette of the cape and wherever else, right? So I'd just push it a little bit more. But the main thing is those knees. They're standing out like a sore thumb at the moment. So yeah, I will move on to the next. It seems like a lot of
Thank
people have
you.
asked for feedback. We're busier than we were last week. Who's next? Ellie. Composition for a sketch you're going to paint. Anything I'd improve about the narrative? It's basically just yearning. Okay. Who are they yearning for? Whoever's up there in the window, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's just I think there are lots of really powerful tools that you have to your advantage when you're thinking about narrative. And the most intuitive of those is going to be the way that your character is posed. This, to me, does not say yearning. She's almost like, I don't know, about to do a dance or something.
Yeah, that's actually the.
Is she actually about to do a dance?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it's not just yearning. There's something. We're getting more complex. We're 2 layers deep. We're doing a yearning dance.
When you put it like that, I guess
Okay.
it is. Yeah.
It's
like a bowl, and it's a maid who's looking up or something.
Oh, and she.
A peasant woman
Okay.
or
Well.
of some sort.
Well, let's just do that. Let's say that she's looking up.
I was playing around with having some silhouettes thrown by the light.
I think that would be really cool.
Inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the color of her hair fixed? Is that a determined factor, or can it be anything?
No, it can be anything.
You don't have to do it like this. You could do it just with the shape, but contrasting the skin versus the color of the hair is gonna allow her to look up with those just two graphic shapes. You've got like the back of the head and the face on that side, and maybe we see a little bit of nose poking out if we can. Whereas here it looks like she's looking like at this wall. Nothing's particularly saying that she's looking up here. Other things that we could do to make her feel more like she's looking up is just some of that ear. Like the ear is a really good marker of the side of the head. So we could say, bingo, there's an ear. But have it looking up. She's kind of, I don't know, when I think of yearning, I think of it as something that's reasonably sad. Like you want something you can't have. She looks quite happy at the moment. Maybe we should, this is quite a striking straight line for that arm. Could it be that her arm's coming down before it's coming back out? Like she's, a little bit, not nervous, but shy about it. She's like, oh, maybe I'll do a little dance, but I'm feeling a bit left out and sad. We could orient her entire body in a different direction. So she's really facing up there. And then maybe her back arm's coming out of there. this going in or something. I don't know. I really want to bring the attention. It's like I want her eyes to be making a line straight to here, and a figure is so complex that you could spend hours and hours and hours and hours trying to get that to feel right.
I struggle with the almost like the simplification since it's a smaller character
Yeah,
in the composition. Like that you can't go in and zoom in super far and do all the detail because it just
it
looks
makes
whack.
sense. Yeah, but I think that's a really good limitation to have on yourself is that you can't zoom in. I'm gonna have to change the Spotify because it started playing something that YouTube isn't gonna allow me. So yeah, I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think maybe we could increase the sense that it's moonlit by top lighting it. If we top light it, it also makes it feel like we want to look up to see where that light's coming from. But we could even, it seems like a fairly graphic illustration that you're going for. You know, maybe we can actually get reasonably bright and high contrast with that. Something about this is it's fairly low contrast at the moment, especially compared with the window. Maybe the story that you want to tell is that even though they're up there having a nice ball, she's the real star, right? And she's bathed in this moonlight and she's having her own little ball, and part of that is the lighting.
Yeah, this is for a class preemptively, but I had a couple compositions of her like dancing amongst the shadows, like cast by the.
That sounds quite fun.
Yeah, I liked it. The teacher, I don't know, the teacher encouraged, said it was a bit vague, so.
Okay. Well,
I have that somewhere.
I think if you were gonna have her dancing with the shadows, you wouldn't do it from this angle. Because the shadows are gonna be so distorted and so high up, it's not gonna function. But maybe we kill the lights on the building so that they're strong, but like they almost sort of dissipate as soon as they leave. So it's like, bam, I get this big strong light. There is going to be... So you've got these lights going straight into this corner where this wall meets. But they cannot... The light source would have to come out and then do a 90-degree turn to hit that corner. So you're actually going to get a cast shadow onto this wall as well. So the windows are going to be something like that. Something further out. It's a really small change, but if you're going to take this to a finished illustration, that's probably good to bear in mind. Now, because we've darkened this, maybe we can, get that sense that she's sort of having a little dance herself, and there's dust in the air or something.
Oh, the dust is a good touch.
And yeah, she could be looking up there. She could have her arm. There are so many narrative things to play around with that you could iterate on this and do so many thumbnails playing around with all of it. Is she actually gonna like? She's like stopped by the fence, and that fence can be picking up some of that bright light, and we can maybe think about it a bit more. So there's a barrier in between her and the party that she wants to go to. That might work. Other things. Were you in the call when we were talking about this idea that if you have a red guy, a blue guy, and a green guy, that they're all equally as important?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we're sort of we're fighting here between, do you want them to look at the character or do you want them to look at this room? And I think that the narrative you're probably going for, assuming this is like a Cinderella style story, is that actually she thinks she wants to be up there, but this is full of people that don't like her. Something like that. You know, they're all the rich people that would like hate to have a maid in there. And actually she should be the focus. She's the star of her own show or something. Something soppy and sad. And so maybe we just imply that there's more light going on up here, right? So this one's still the most important. It's still the brightest. You know, there's not quite as much going on there. But I think by implying that there's many rooms that are in use, but there's only one maid that's looking up at them, it's almost like this is really busy, and this is where this implies there's a lot more people, and she's the one person that's been left out, right? So it's like many versus few. But I don't know. That's one way you could take it. This is very striking, having this one set of windows with the light coming out of them. What else can we do? Hey, foreground elements probably gonna get darker. We're probably gonna get these sides of the steps make it a little bit darker. Hair cast shadow. Let's make that a little bit darker. Let's just continue this building over here a little bit. So the reason I'm doing that is because here you're almost getting to the point where this building is just connecting with the side of the frame, and this is such a tiny slither of building that it's a point of tension, like it's a tangent almost. So if we just lift that up a little bit, we could lift it even further, then it's not quite as tense. The other benefit that has is actually kind of making this feel, again, it might not suit the narrative that you're going for, so just you know, you got to decide what kind of narrative you want. But I'm imagining that, again, we want to contrast poor, kind-hearted maid with like horrible, overbearing, rich buildings. And so, you know, I might even be tempted to have them go further up, you know. Like this is a huge castle that everyone's having a party at, and she's not invited.
The setting is like a Venetian
Oh,
sort of
okay, well,
city. She's meant to be on a bridge, but of course, like the water, you can't really see it through the.
let's get some Venetian stuff. So, the Venetians, they love their domes. And that dome is going to be lit, something like that. So, we could get some kind of a dome going. I think this is sort of more in line with maybe the architecture. You could have someone's opened the skylight. Oh, I'm on 1% opacity, which isn't ideal. You know, almost like a big disco ball. There's loads of stuff going on there. There's light that's sort of pouring out from different angles. This is the place to be. So if this is water, or if this is a bridge going over water, surely the water's going to run into this building. Unless it turns around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you'd have the docks under buildings.
I'm trying to think if there's a way that we can illustrate that, to make it more obvious. I mean, maybe this side of the building also has a. We can like repeat that shape that we have in the foreground, and say that this is like a you know, there's a boathouse or something built into the side of this building that they all park in. I don't know. Maybe we're probably
Yeah.
getting way too complicated.
No, but it's tough, right? Because like, it would be nice to have like the reflections of the party on the water, but it's like, yeah, the composition just
It's tricky, yeah.
yeah, so
And
it wouldn't add to it.
yeah, and part of the thumbnailing is that you try this from. You could get this exact scene and try it, but with the camera 2 meters to the right, or like 1 meter higher up. I mean, it's one of the reasons that 3D is so powerful is because you could just go, this angle. Maybe I want to try something slightly different. You know.
Yeah, Blender helped with that.
Yeah. Right. So. Yeah. I
Okay.
hope this helps. I'll put this
Yes,
in
thank you.
feedback. Okay. Who is next? Someone whose name begins with a T. I can't see names because I'm in Discord streamer mode, so I will just have to bring it up on screen and you can tell me that it's yours. This one? Also going to mute myself so I can have a swig of my drink.
You did not mute.
I muted on the stream. Don't worry. You lot in Discord get to enjoy me swigging Fanta. Shout out to Fanta. But no, not on Discord. I forgot about that. Yes, this is yours. What would you like feedback on? You were struggling on the gesture and the rendering. Tell me about the character and what they're meant to be. There's some kind of something to do with stars and constellations, right? And astrology, which is cool. I like that. Let's just have a little browse through feedback while I'm here. Has anyone else put anything in? Oh, we've got more. Oh, you've put some other compositions of the dancing in as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I really do like the one where she's dancing with the shadows. I think narratively that's so strong.
Yeah, we could do both. I could do both. We'll make it a sequence.
Yeah. I think certainly if she's sort of dancing around these docks, you could imagine it in a Disney film that it would be part of the song is she's sort of dancing around while she sings and laments about her loneliness. Oh god. Okay. They're basically a galaxy elf with colourful skin and some kind of cosmic cloud as hair. Okay. Let's talk about gesture, shall we? So, one thing that's really key here is foreshortening and folding. Folds and folds and folds on all this cloth. But there's not really any folds at the moment. You know, I would expect there to be something going on where this is probably going to be brought up here and you're going to get all this ruching and whatever else, right? It might be that you just pull up some reference for that. I'm imagining that you drew this from your imagination. So it should be really easy to find reference of people in that kind of white shirt. And you can just look at the shapes that are being made. If you want to start drawing cloth and drapery from your imagination, it just takes a while. Just do lots of life drawing of people on the bus or in cafes or on trains. Everyone wears clothes, thankfully, and so there's loads out there for you to study and think about. In terms of the foreshortening, what you're doing is this. So you're saying this arm up here is that length, and then you've got your hand, which is doing whatever it's doing. Okay, and that's fine. And then you're saying this arm down here is the same shape, but it just gets smaller as it gets further away. So it's doing something like that. Which isn't quite how foreshortening is going to function here. So I think the issue is that depending on your camera focal length, which we don't really need to worry about too much, this hand is not actually going to be smaller than this hand, right? So if you look at photographs of people, or you take your own photographs of people, if I put one hand further away and one hand out in front of me, even when I'm looking at them right now, one of my hands is way further away from me than the other one. They're not that wildly different, especially if you use like a longer focal length, which this seems to be. The reason I think this is a longer focal length is because, I don't know if you were around in the call before, it's that idea that we're talking about where things are parallel, right? So if you wanted this to be a really crazy angle where this hand is actually going to get really tiny and far away, then like this foot would also have to get, you know, way bigger and closer to us, and this foot would have to get really tiny and far away as well. You know, and this hand you'd want to get way closer to us so that that one can get really far away. So you'd have to apply it consistently on the whole character. Instead, I think the solution to this is simple. So you're going to take these parts, you know, I can split the hand into the hand, the forearm, and the upper arm, and you can overlap them without making anything smaller. So, like, I can say that this hand is going to be on the end of this, but actually this arm is going to be behind this forearm, right? So we got the upper arm, and then this part of the arm is like going away from us, and then we get the hand. But the hand is actually the same size. It's just they're overlapping more. What's a better example of this? Because I feel like this isn't very good. If you look at a person and you simplify their body as a bean and another bean, and there's their head, they're very happy. And then they've got legs, right? If you wanted to do this for shortened, you wouldn't just get the bean and then the other bean and then the head, but the head's getting bigger and the feet, right? You would begin to overlap these elements, like we're actually viewing them from a different angle. So instead you get your head, and then like this bean is being overlapped by the head, and then this bean is overlapping again, right? So we're not seeing the whole thing, it's going behind here, right? Then our legs, like the top of the leg is going to overlap the bottom of the leg, something like that. So I think this is what's happening here with this arm, is none of this is overlapping in any way. It just seems to be getting smaller. So enough yapping from me. I think this is simple. I think we'll grab this hand for future use. No. I think we're going to take that and we're going to make it a little bit bigger. And we're going to put it here. And then we're going to say that this part of the shirt is overlapping. We're going to get some kind of a fold in there. Right, so this part we are viewing, we're parallel to. It's going that way, and then this part is going in, further away from us. So we'll get that, and then that part's going in. You know, we might actually move this hand further in as well. No. you know, which is really tricky to think about, and maybe this isn't the greatest angle for that to work. But we're saying that this is receding in space away from us. It's the same thing with this leg. Like, it's almost like you're determined to have both of these legs be a perfect side view to the camera. Same thing with the head. Like, the head is almost a perfect side view as well. But would it be so bad if we said actually this leg is going like this away from us, right? And then actually this foot's going to come back at us and then away from us again, right? So like this leg is foreshortened because it's going further away. It's doing something else. You can think about the gesture of it as it moves in and out of 3D depth or 3D space, I guess. The actual gesture of it, how would I do a gesture like this? Let's have a think. So I'd take shoulder lines, compare with hip lines. I'd probably exaggerate the difference between them. The moment, like this one's straight and this one's like that, which is fine. I'm gonna get the curve of the spine. This leg that's holding all the weight. I'm gonna have to do that. This leg, maybe I actually bring out towards us, so like it's becoming more rounded. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a cylinder that's coming out towards us. And maybe I'm seeing like the underside of that foot. Like that. Looks a bit dodgy. And then I think maybe I want to view, I almost want to look up at this body from below. And so part of this head is going to overlap. See the underside of the chin and the nose. And that way I'll see all of this crazy galaxy hair going out of nowhere. That is the dodgiest leg I've ever drawn. Let's just simplify it like that. In fact, let's push it out a little bit more. And then bring this leg in a little bit more. Or further back if you want it to feel like it's sort of off balance. Then I think this arm can come down. They're doing something mad with that. And then this arm is going to go up, but away from us. They're going to be doing something with that. Let's swap these legs around. So let's have this one is actually going, oh, that's tricky, isn't it? So this knee is coming up and then down, and maybe we're seeing the underside of this foot. And then this leg is maybe going back like that. So I think the main thing to bear in mind, because I know I just sort of sped through this and I changed it quite a bit from yours, is if I were to represent each limb as a cylinder with a top and bottom ellipse. So I'm going to do something like this for most limbs. That's a sort of a default limb shape I go for. Then I sort of want every single point, every single one of these ellipses, which we'll do in blue, I want it to be an ellipse. I don't want it to be a straight line. So if I'm ever placing a limb in 3D space so that the top and bottom of this cylinder are perfectly flat lines rather than showing the depth like an ellipse, then what I'm doing is I've got that limb oriented at a perfect 90-degree angle to the camera or the viewer, and it just sort of feels a little bit unnatural. It doesn't feel quite right. So some places you're doing that quite well, like you're going, that curve there says that this is moving away from the viewer, but like there should also be a curve here, and maybe part of that curve is, you know, folds from the rest of this, right? The shoulder line, like, is that shoulder going away from us, or is it coming towards us? Because if it's coming towards us, then it's completely different, right? They're now pulling their arm back, and then their forearm goes forward. But if we say actually it's going away from us, then their whole torso feels like it's turning further away. So those lines are really, really important, and it's how I choose to represent depth. So that little line says that this whole arm is going away from us, and then it's sort of coming back up towards us because I can see the top of it, right? This, the fact that that's almost a full circle, says it's pointing straight at us. The shallower it is, the more it's pointing up or down, and the wider it is, the more it's facing towards us or away from us. And it's a really simple thing that I think is deceivingly simple. Like, I think you'd look at that and go, oh, well, yeah, obviously all limbs are facing in a specific direction. But the more you draw and paint, the more you begin to realize that that kind of shorthand is so insanely valuable, that you can represent some of this stuff like that. I did it with this, like, when I was painting this thing, you know, as soon as I put a little circle there for maybe where her arms scrunched up, like, it says that that arm is going away from us. So it's a little visual notation that helps the viewer. Just helps them out. Why not help the viewer out? You know. But yeah, I'd probably go for, if it's a really dynamic pose, it's literally like a galaxy elf doing something crazy, cosmic hair. I'd go for a more dynamic camera angle. And my last piece of advice before I move on to someone else is, imagine that you have a friend who is a galaxy elf, right? And they're doing a dance move like this, and they said, can you take a photo of me for it's for Instagram or whatever, right? I don't know why a galaxy elf's on Instagram, but I really, really doubt, and I would hope, that you wouldn't grab the phone and just stand straight on and just take the first photo that you could. You'd probably, like, you know, move your whole body and head to try and get like a dynamic angle. You might start crouching down on the floor to get like a crazy angle shooting up at them. So just think about how you would pose it and how you would do it if you were a photographer, right? It's a dynamic pose. It deserves a dynamic camera angle to go from. And then when you start tackling the camera angle, think about the orientation of each limb in 3D space, using the top and bottom. You know, all of a sudden that is facing a different direction, just based on the depth of the ellipse, which is, it's a simplification, really. It's a bit more complex than that, but that will get you going, I think. Do you have anything else in particular you want feedback on this on? I think it's a really cool idea. I might have to paint my own crazy galaxy elf. See what they're up to. I'm going to mute myself on stream and Discord this time. You're not going to stop me. We're back. Any general feedback on the rendering? Yeah, I would have a stronger light source. So, This reads to me as being very diffuse. There's not a point light or a strong point light going on. And so all I would do, and I would not do it like this, I would actually do it carefully and considerately, is I would say it's being lit from a direction. So as soon as we start putting, well, now it's lit from above, right? And that means that these pants also have to be lit from above, right? Probably not going to get much going on there. Top of the foot might be lit from above. Right, so rendering, I think, relies on the idea that you have light coming from a direction, because as soon as you have light coming from a direction, well, we can talk all about how actually this form is turning from light to shadow, and how are the folds gonna interact with that, and whatever else, right? And we can start rendering it to make it feel a bit more 3D. But when you have something very, very diffuse, so there's not like a strong direction to any of the lighting, it's difficult to begin to render it. I think you just make life more difficult for yourself. You could have like a color dodge layer like that, you know, and now you get to go, oh, well, actually, how is this? How are these pants turning away from light? You've got a lit side and a shadow side, and how are they interacting with each other? That's really interesting. So, yeah, just think about how it's lit. And again, the lighting, the only thing I'm doing here with this lighting is I'm emphasizing that cylindrical form that we drew earlier. So, it all reinforces itself. I'm going to put this in feedback. Then we're on to someone else. Who's next? There's a cat. There's a cute cat. Wow. Let's bring the cat up. I like cats. What's the goal with the cat? Is it like a pet portrait? Is it someone's pet cat that they want you to paint, or is it just for fun? You just paint your cat. What kind of feedback do you want on your cat as well? It's your cat. It's a very nice cat. Lighting. Okay. I'm assuming you're working from a photograph? Yeah. So surely the lighting is just going to be determined by the photograph? You know, you're not inventing this lighting from your imagination, are you? I think the main thing I'd worry about is representing some of this stuff with maybe larger shapes, larger brushstrokes. You know, let's just take this, for example, this blue light on the fair. I know you're trying to represent all of that fair interacting with itself, but I think we could just go, you know, and represent it with a bigger shape rather than all those really, really tiny shapes. Let's do the same thing on this side. So we'll sample this just so that we have the right color, and then let's flatten that side out, and then let's say like, I think you can do more with each brushstroke, and it might save you time and energy. Like, if there's so much going on in something like that I'd use an elliptical selection tool. behaves, yeah. And I'd go, there's that. Maybe we want, yeah, some of that reflection in there, so I'm just going to get the soft round, do some kind of reflection, and then I want a highlight on top. Well, okay, I'm just going to put a highlight on top, right? I'm not thinking all that hard, because I think the problem currently is, it's IBIS on your phone, okay, is the further you zoom out, it's okay, but when you're viewing it at this scale, there's lots of little stuff that starts to become a little bit distracting. All these tiny little brush strokes, especially up here, I'd say. You know, you're getting something quite high contrast up here. Let's have a think about how we might tackle this. So let's just simplify the ear as a big pink shape. Well, the further inside the ear we get, we're going to get darker and warmer. It's not going to get... So we're just going to do a soft gradient like that. Darker and warmer again. I don't know how cat's ears work. I don't own a cat. And then maybe we get this fair color, right? And we can. Right. So I've put down maybe like 5 of those brushstrokes, right? Compared with like a million of them. I think it gets you something a lot. It's like you're not drawing every hair. You're not painting every hair. You're suggesting that there are lots of hairs there. You're simplifying them into a collective, a group, so that maybe they're not quite as high contrast and distracting. You know, and you could always go, well, actually, I want to paint another brushstroke into that, and say, well, there you go. There's my cat's ear. But I think, yeah, your main issue is you're breaking things down into like every conceivable hair possible, when I don't think you need to do that. So let's do the same thing here. Let's just simplify this, and then let's grab that you want, right, and we can unify it into bigger, bolder shapes. And then when you start doing that, a lot more of your time is spent thinking about the correct value, right? Rather than like all of these separate brushstrokes and things. So if I'm no longer worried about zooming in or really getting like the tear duct perfectly correct, I'm going to look at the bigger picture, and I'm going to concentrate on, well, actually, you know, does this feel like it's lit by something? Maybe we could get a stronger light source from this side. Maybe some of that could start to interact with the eye. You know, if that's hitting the ear, is the whole ear gonna get a lot of that sort of subsurface scattering? It's gonna get quite bright as this really warm light sort of comes through the back of it, maybe. Let's go darker and more saturated. Yeah. Something like that. Does that make sense? So, I mean, the main thing is unifying shapes into bigger, you know, all this stuff. Now, there's nothing stopping you going back in. You know, I'd take this big shape and then maybe I'd start breaking it into a couple of smaller shapes. But it's much more, it feels much more confident and deliberate. And I feel like when you're painting, a big part of it is almost just faking it till you make it, you know? It's like making big, broad, confident decisions that people look at in your painting and they go, yeah, they know what they're doing. So, yeah, I'll put this in feedback. I think we're making it through. Is there anyone else in VC that hasn't received feedback? Victor. Trying out an ocean-themed Art Nouveau-inspired drawing for an art trade. Any critique for the composition?
That's me.
Let's open it up and have a gander, shall we?
Should we unmute for these? I saw someone unmute before.
Hmm?
Should we unmute for these? Or quite a lot of people just type in the voice chat.
It's completely up to you if you want to use your voice
Okay.
or type. I don't mind.
Okay,
Um, It is being streamed to YouTube, so as long as you're happy with your voice being
Oh.
on YouTube, then.
Okay.
I think this is nice.
Thank you.
You've captured the Alphonse Mucha vibe very well.
Yeah, I tried to focus on the hair because that's what I've seen. It's no Leyendecker, but I tried doing the little whatever that is in the corners. I've seen a bunch of
The
those.
sort of filigree. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
I think some of these shapes are... I mean, the main shape that I'm worried about is this part of it. So,
Mhm.
like this big thing.
Yeah.
Because this up here, this is really, really nice.
Thank you.
This to me reads as hair. But this part almost reads as like a cape. Or a... Do you know when you sort of waft a blanket?
Yeah, I had an idea while sketching to sort of separate it into more chunks, but that seemed like too much work for an art trade.
Yeah. It might just be that it's gonna be too much faff for you. Because this is the right arm.
Mm,
This left arm. Is the implication that this left arm is going perfectly behind the hair or something?
the shoulder and that hand are actually the same arm, supposedly. I think they're supposed to be the same right arm.
Oh yeah. I know that, but where is the left arm? Is it because it's not
just behind the hair, conveniently placed there.
Yeah, I think that's the bit that's a little bit weird to me. Is either I would have, and I'm no line art person, so bear with me.
Mhm.
You know, potentially even if it is behind the hair, but it sneaks out at the end to grab onto the star.
Oh, that would be good. There's quite a lot of space on the left upper part of the star.
Yeah, you could have it overlap on the front. You know, it could
Mhm.
overlap the whole thing and then go back into the hair. Right.
There's also a thing of that when hair is in water, you can just stick your hand through it. That will work. But I can't be bothered with that.
The other thing you could do is just and it might be more Alphonse Mucari really to, you know, have the other hand down here doing something very nice, not like what I've drawn, you know.
Yeah, it
But you know, because it's staying within the silhouette of the rest of the tail.
Mhm.
In fact, yeah, I quite like that as a solution. But I think not having it show at all is weird because yeah, the implication is that it's following this, but why would it be held out over here doing nothing? So yeah, I'd put it down there, have it grab onto the start, have it do something, have it reappear somewhere.
Mhm.
And I know you can't be bothered, but ideally I would just break up this.
Yeah,
a
that's
little
sort of
bit more.
how I did in the sketch. I can try to do it. See, because usually I draw hairs just like one big blob, and I don't texture it unless it's the bangs or something.
Yeah, that's fair.
I thought-
I think usually that would work, but maybe it's, I don't know, it's such a big part of the composition. You're gonna have to add texture in anyway if you're gonna paint over the thing.
Mhm.
So actually getting more of the lines to do the heavy lifting might not be a bad idea.
I can try to get the sketch to show you how I did it originally, if you'd like
Yeah,
to see.
yeah, feel free.
Also, while I'm getting it, is there like a limit to how many drawings can a single person submit, because there's
Oh, no,
quite a few of old
if
sketches.
if you want more feedback, then you can.
Mm.
Let me just check the feedback channel, see if anyone. I think you're the last person who's asked for feedback anyway. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, no one else is waiting.
Mhm.
So feel free to send more stuff in. That's fine. I'll be around at least for the next 15 minutes until 8 p.m.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna send you the sketch then. Um. Oh, that looks very different from the final thing. I'll send it in the same feedback channel then.
Okay.
That was the original idea of just adding little lines to
Yeah,
suggest.
yeah. I think that works really
Yeah.
nicely.
That's nice then. I'll try to finish the original idea in the sketch.
The other thing that I think works nicely, which you could still do, if you separate this back part of the hair,
Mm-hmm.
as long as it's dark enough, you'll get the same effect. But I quite like in your sketch how we're getting this dark shape that's coming in and it's framing, it's silhouetting the bottom of the face and the shoulder, you know.
Yeah, I remember I saw on Pinterest like some random Art Nouveau picture, and up to that point I haven't seen a single Art Nouveau piece that had dark colors at all, and so it was
Mhm.
quite refreshing. And I used that because it had like two dark circles behind the character, and I thought behind the person, I thought it was quite nice.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's really good. I think it frames them. I think you run the risk at the moment of because this it depends what color you do for this hair, but this part of the hair is gonna have to transition to something dark in order to
yeah,
silhouette the face.
the character isn't mine, so I can't unfortunately change anything.
What color's the hair?
I can set you the ref image actually, but the upper bit is all black, and then it transitions into a lighter, like teal color later.
Okay. Well,
It's
maybe it'll end up framing the head after all, because this is still fairly far up the head, isn't it?
This is what they look like.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be fine. That'll frame it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure about the
Are you gonna get
dark.
Are you gonna get the earring on? You're missing an earring.
Am I missing an earring?
Sh-
Oh my god! Thank you,
should be here.
Christ.
Another perfect circle.
That would be quite good. That would be nice for the symmetry.
Yeah. And it's just that repeating motif throughout the image, isn't it? Circles
Mhm.
within circles within circles. Something about the seaweed bothers me.
Yeah, it's
I think I would. I think I would have it overlap more. So the idea with this up here is that it is a complex pattern, but it's
Mhm.
framed by this incredibly simple graphic shape.
Mhm.
Whereas these are just complex shapes. So if you continue this seaweed behind the character, like there's more stuff in here, then you're gonna get the same thing happen where actually we don't see it as a collection of complex shapes. All we're gonna see is
Oh yeah,
like this nice big shape, right?
like the same way that the circle is
Yeah,
these.
exactly the same as
Yeah,
this. So
yeah, that would be good.
you just get more of this stuff down here to the point where it sort of averages out and we just see it as noise. And up here is only really where you'd have to worry about it transition. You could have it go behind the character here as well. And I know it's getting a little bit complex, but really I think it works because
that looks quite nice.
yeah, then this circle really is the focal point and everywhere else is quite busy. So you got the circle and then you got this looping round.
Yeah, and then it stands out even more.
Yeah, it's very, very, very graphic. So I'll screenshot this and send this in. Right. Does anyone? There are some people viewing on Twitch as well. Not Twitch, YouTube. I've got 10 minutes if anyone wants some more feedback.
Oh, I've got a few more sketches.
Go on.
Actually, first, about this specific piece, I'm thinking of like I'm obviously gonna color it, but I'm not quite sure what to do with that because I haven't colored the drawing in like ages. I'm thinking of like tails, but also like muted golds for the pop-ups. Like, do you have any ideas of what I should do? Maybe.
Give me a sec. I would, yeah, a lot of these kinds of images that I'm used to seeing are very, not monochromatic, that's the wrong word. They're very neutral.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff.
So we could take this, but we could say that actually we want a lot of those yellows to be blues and then adjust the temperature accordingly. But then we also have to go, now we want the greens to be, hold on. Now we want the greens to go more blue as well. And you could go with something like that. But notice how just like this, you have this very, very, very complex compared with very, very, very simple. It's big contrast going on. It's the same thing here, like most of the image, even in the original, most of the image is that sort of greeny, yellowy brown.
Yeah, they only use one color.
And then you've just got a little bit of color. Like the skin and the costume are the same color. The hair is basically the same color. It's the same sort of hue family.
Yeah, and the book that they're holding is also very similar.
Yeah, and even when they have a contrast, so you've got this green versus this. Let's do that on a separate layer, shall we? So even when you have a contrast, those two are so close together. Can you see the RGB panel moving?
No, I don't think.
In the top right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's
so
very
those,
slight.
those sliders are right next to each other. Yeah. But it's a difference in temperature, but the value is. I mean, we can check the value.
There's
the
a
value is
specific.
the same, basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a specific piece by a different artist, which I fully, don't claim to that this is my art, but I saw this drawing at one point, and I thought, oh, this would work very well for this kind of art. And I think that's not suggestive. I think, maybe.
I think that's fun.
Well, yeah. But I'm not sure, because it seems like they dulled a lot of the contrast to be essentially the same. It's like they put a gray filter over it, and I'm not sure if that would work for this kind of drawing, or if I should make like the blacks really black.
I think what they've literally, it's like this Alphonse Mucha, but instead of being light, it's just dark. In fact, let's do it with curves.
Because I really like that kind of effect.
So if we, it's almost like that, isn't it? Just compressed. Maybe the darks have to get a little bit darker. But it's not even like that, is it? It's almost. Sorry, the people on the stream can't actually see what the reference is that I'm looking at. Yeah, it's low contrast and very flat. Like the contrast within groups is really, really flat. In fact, it looks like all of the variation or sort of quote unquote painting that's going on is just drawing. Do you know what I mean? It's like they have a flat shape, and then in order to go darker, it's actually just. It's not
And
actually
these
that the color's
very-
going darker. It's just that there's a drawing on top doing this stuff. You know.
Yeah, like on the leg of the bloke.
Merman.
Oh no, the merman is the other one. The one that's hugging. The one that's being hugged.
Oh,
That's like line.
are they both mermen?
Oh, one of them has got a leg.
I read that as a tail still. You know, the leg. Oh yeah, I
Oh.
guess it is a leg.
Oh, there's like a knee. And
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Ah, well. Right, I'm gonna call it there. So
Okay. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Have a lovely rest of your Monday evening.
You as well. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye. So yeah, I hope everyone that turned up enjoyed or not enjoyed found their feedback useful. I saw that we had quite a few people join the Discord. Maybe they're gonna pop in next time for some feedback. So yeah, I think I'm gonna continue to try and do this every Monday. Now that I don't have live drawing on a Monday evening, and I'm enjoying it. I hope you are. Right, I'm gonna end the stream now.